Good evening, everyone. I am Frankie Gilmore, and on behalf of the Culpeper Chamber of Commerce, welcome to our second of 4 candidate forums. This is a chance for you to hear in-the-moment responses from our candidates about topics that are impacting individuals and businesses here in our community. Before I introduce our moderator, though, I want to take a moment. On your seat, you're going to see a couple cards. The first one is nominating for an individual or a business. This is for our annual awards banquet. Please take a moment. If you know of someone deserving of an award or a business, nominate them. This is public. The public, we invite all of you. If you have someone, please nominate. For those of you businesses, it would be amiss if I didn't say we still have sponsorship opportunities. So please see Lorraine or Amy or myself in the back for any information about our awards meet or our annual meeting and awards banquet. I would also like to thank a few folks that are making tonight possible. Our media partners, Star Exponent, Culpeper Times, Culpeper Media Network, who is actually live broadcast tonight. So thank you. We also have INL Productions. So thank you for our technical support, and to the Culpeper businesswomen for providing water. I know the candidates and a few volunteers are greatly appreciated. Thank you. Our moderator tonight is a dear friend. I'd like to introduce you to Jeff Say. Jeff has been a member of the Culpeper community for 15 years. Working at several media and press companies, and he's heavily involved in our community, and I can vouch for that. He currently is serving on the Salvation Army Advisory Board as secretary. He lives here in Culpeper with his wife, Sarah, and who is a kindergarten teacher at Emerald Hill Elementary School. He has 3 daughters, Maddie, Mara, and Macy. So folks, put your hands together for Jeff Say, our moderator.
Thank you, and welcome here this evening, everyone. Welcome to the Culpeper Chamber of Commerce State Delegate and State Senator Forums. Thank you for joining the site to further your knowledge of our area. Remember, this is an informative forum. Please refrain from any outbursts during the program. If there continues to be a disruption, that person will be asked to leave. In the interest of time, we also ask to please hold all applause until the end of each session. As we're live tonight on Culpeper Media Network, please remain seated during the forum, and there will be a 5-minute break between each session. Thank you again. Tonight, we will begin with our State Senate Forum. We'll begin introductions. Each candidate will receive 2 minutes to speak. And we'll start on my left with Miss Amy Laufer, who is running for the 17th District.
Yes, thank you. I first want to just say thank you all for being here, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting us. My name is Amy Laufer, and I'm running for Senate District 17. I grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin. I am one of 8 children, and in order for our farm to survive, each one of us kids had to work. We did everything from baling hay, picking stones, feeding and milking the cows, and a lot of other stuff, as well as getting good grades, and then when we were old enough, getting a paying job. And I'm proud to say that I am first-generation college graduate. I fully funded my education, doing lots of different jobs, including packing fish in Alaska, which is that smelly. But I got a degree in geology, and I really wanted to serve our country. So I volunteered as a Peace Corps volunteer. I was stationed outside of Kingston, Jamaica at an elementary school. And I tell you, I fell in love with education. That experience really highlighted for me how important it is to have a good education system for a healthy society. So I came back, I got my master's in education, and I taught middle school math and science in Louisa County. I taught for a couple years until our second child was born, and he had major medical issues, which forced me to stay home with him. But while I was home, I ended up getting elected to our local school board. And, I really wanted to do that when I realized that I could be a voice for parents and families with special needs children. I served as vice chair and chair. We had a lot of challenges, but a lot of success. We had highest graduation ever while I was on the school board. And I can tell you from my time on school board, it's really important who we elect. Having elected officials that listen to our concerns and actively advocate for us. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Laufer. And now, 2 minutes for Senator Emmett Hanger of the 24th District.
Thank you. And thank you to the folks of Culpeper County and to the Chamber for sponsoring this event. This is a very successful event, at least from the number of people that are here. Sometimes we go to these events and there are more candidates there are than people actually watching. So it makes you feel good when people show that they have an interest in their community and their representation. I am currently in the Senate. I've been in the Senate for some time now. I am a resident of Augusta County, but this district that I represent in Richmond includes Augusta, most of Rockingham, Stanton, Waynesboro, Greene, Madison, and portions of, actually most of rural Culpeper. It doesn't contain that portion that Amy would seek to represent that hooks on to Orange, or the portion that is up beyond Brandy Station and to the west there, but most of rural Culpeper County. I have a background in business. I'm a graduate of James Madison University. Went there and played a little basketball, got an education, and I have a wife who's with me here this evening, 5 grown children, 4 of whom are married, so I have like 14 grandchildren who occupy a lot of my time. I spend a lot of time in this job. I'm fortunate to have achieved leadership positions in the Commonwealth. I co-chair the Senate Finance Committee. I enjoy representing Culpeper. It basically has a lot of agriculture similar to the areas I represent in Augusta and Rockingham as well as Madison. So I feel right at home here. I appreciate the Chamber here because y'all have many events, and I try to get to all of them: a spring forum, a winter forum, and then special recognition events that you have here. And I've tried to hit every one of them, schedule permitting. So thank y'all for being here this evening, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Senator. And now, Ms. Annette Hyde, running for the 24th District.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for coming tonight. I want to thank the Culpeper Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this forum, and I want to thank Germanna Community College for hosting this forum. My name is Annette Hyde, and I'm a yoga teacher living in Madison County. I'm running for the state senate because for the first time since redistricting in 2011, you will have a choice at the ballot box in November. I believe my life experiences and my love for the people of Culpeper, the 24th Senate District, and the Commonwealth of Virginia can make a powerful difference in the General Assembly. We're not being served by our current legislators. It's time for new leaders to take on problems and provide solutions for rural issues like internet access, healthcare, education, as well as make progress on the systemic issues of economic, social, and environmental inequality. We want fast, reliable, affordable internet service just like everyone else. Lack of internet affects our school children, home sales, family farms, and small businesses. The General Assembly should be acting in the interest of the people, not just Verizon and Comcast. Healthcare is a right, not a privilege. We shouldn't have to choose between bankruptcy or death if we're faced with a serious illness. That's why we need to buy the option to buy into Medicaid at the state level. Monthly health insurance premiums shouldn't cost us more than a monthly mortgage payment, and then we shouldn't have to pay co-pays and deductibles on top of that. All children deserve the best public education possible, especially kids who are learning emotionally and physically disabled. We should fully fund universal pre-K and full-day kindergarten. Middle and high schools should be preparing students for career and technical jobs as well as college. Virginia ranks 12th in the nation in per capita income, but 32nd in the nation in average teacher pay and 42nd in the nation when it comes to per pupil spending. I'm looking forward to the questions tonight and talking about my vision for the 24th Senate District.
Thank you. We have 3 questions this evening of the candidates. We will begin with Ms. Laufer. What solutions do you see for the current international trade climate, and what impact do you see it having on our local economy?
Thank you for that question. I can just tell you, in my hometown, when I talk to my dad, farmers are really afraid that they are going to lose their farms. They're feeling the pressure of closed markets, and as a state senator, I mean, of course that's a federal issue, but I definitely am concerned for our communities. We don't want to see our businesses and our farmers losing business. I can say that, you know, as what I know is that there is liaison between the state government and the federal government, and I would love to amplify the voices of the 17th with our federal representation to know how we are being affected by these trade agreements. And I would also just like to say that as a state, maybe we can help farmers and businesses diversify their products, diversify their markets, including expanding broadband so that our small businesses and our farmers can actually access markets locally.
Thank you. Senator Hanger, what solutions do you see for the current international trade climate, and what impact do you see it having on our local economy?
Certainly, a lot of the policy that comes from the federal level has an impact on what we're able to do with our agriculture community and certainly the economy. In Virginia currently, agriculture and forestry are number 1 and number 3 as far as our agriculture, as far as our economic drivers, our great product. Second, and a lot of that is agritourism. Specifically, over the last couple of years, the 2 budget cycles, we've basically invested a lot in our port, and it's critical. We are actually in competition to the south with Savannah. We put a little over $300 million into an investment in deepening the channel in Portsmouth, and that was done a couple of years ago with capital investment. This past budget, we put another $300 million into some state-of-the-art equipment to facilitate the transfer of freight onto these super tankers that are coming in, or the super ships that are coming in to our port. More closer to home here, we have put in place a grant for agriculture, and I participated this week in a ribbon cutting for a large cold storage facility on Interstate 81, which will be gathering products all over this region that are produced locally in our region, but have to be stored so that you get the timing right for shipment overseas. So that's a couple areas that are very important. We also, in terms of, I've been a strong proponent of protecting our agriculture industries. I've chaired the Agriculture Committee for several years before I achieved the chairmanship of the Finance Committee. Farmland preservation. Just 2 weeks ago, it was 3 weeks ago now, I was with the governor just north of here where we celebrated the 100th and 101st farm that we basically helped preserve through our Purchase of Development Right program. So I think all of these things cumulatively help with our international trade.
Thank you. And Ms. Hyde, what solutions do you see for the current international trade climate, and what impact do you see it having on our local economy?
The international trade wars and the tariffs are having a devastating effect, especially in our agricultural communities and in manufacturing. More farmers are going bankrupt. More farmers are dying by suicide. Farmers want markets. They don't want handouts from the federal government. And even those handouts are going more toward corporate farms than they are to family farms. We need to end these trade wars and end the tariffs, because these markets are not going to be available to our farmers, but that they are now. We also need to diversify our crops. I am a big proponent of industrial hemp, especially in this climate where our recycling facilities are not taking plastic anymore, and industrial hemp can be used to make a more biodegradable plastic.
Thank you. We will move to our second question. We'll begin with Ms. Hyde and work our way back. How do you plan to stay informed of the issues impacting your constituents?
Repeat that again, please.
How do you plan to stay informed of the issues impacting your constituents?
Thank you. I plan to spend, when I'm not in Richmond, in my district, listening to people. I've spent the last 2 years in this district on the ground, helping in the community. I plan to hold town halls. I plan to hold coffees. I am not bound to any boards or commissions that would take up my time in order to spend the time in the community. I plan to be a very active part in this community and be very open to all of my constituents at any time.
Thank you. Senator Hanger, how do you plan to stay informed of the issues impacting your constituents?
In the past, I've done that mostly by attending events. I try to go, if I don't have a scheduling conflict, anywhere that I'm invited, whether it's a civic group like Ruritan's or the Chamber of Commerce events here, the Farm Bureau events throughout the district. I travel a lot in the district, and I think I know the pulse of the district. And also, I'm wide open to communications by email and phone. I readily distribute my cell phone number as an example, so people can contact me. One of my favorite things to do is to walk through Walmart with a tie on. By the time I come out there, I better have a legal pad because I'm going to get half a dozen different questions and issues that people have just walking through Walmart. That's just basically the type of thing that I do to stay in touch. Also, it takes some work to be involved in Richmond, to be knowledgeable about the issues, so it's a two-way street. There's a lot of listening that's involved, so I try to be a good listener so that I understand people's concerns, and then I spend a lot of time in Richmond working the system itself so that I'm better informed with what's going on, more capable of representing my constituency throughout the region. So those are the primary ways that I do it. I'm certainly open to open forums. I participate them whenever invited. And I have a lot of communications, if you will. Some of them, I'm even into social media now, and sometimes I regret that. But I have a Facebook. I don't tweet, so don't look for. I don't know how to tweet, but other than that, I'm involved with social media as well.
Thank you. Ms. Laufer, how do you plan to stay informed of the issues impacting your constituents?
Sure. So I can say, as my experience on school board, Food Lion is some place that you hear a lot of comments from, and making sure I have a notebook with me to take down notes. But attending events is really critical. I went to a lot of PTO meetings, a lot of football games, and a lot of community events to know what people were concerned about and take it seriously. And I would say also making sure that the district I'm running in is Eastern Albemarle, parts of Culpeper City, all of Orange County, most of Louisa, half of Spotsylvania, and all of Fredericksburg. And what I can tell you that I have done is subscribe to almost every paper that is available to make sure that I know what is happening, because it is a very large district. I've had at least 4 oil changes the past couple months. So that's another way to make sure that we know what's happening. And I would just say, I'm here tonight because I really want to hear your concerns, and I'm totally available. As a school board member, I know that that's what I needed to do, and I know as a state representative, you need to do that. And I can tell you I've participated in at least 5 forums at this point, all the way from disability issues to nursing issues to preschool and early education forums. So I'm here to listen, I'm here to learn, and I'm here to advocate for you.
Thank you. Final question tonight. We'll start with Ms. Laufer and work to my right. Afterwards, we will have closing remarks. Name one legislative issue impacting your district that you would like to address.
Only one?
Just one, please.
Okay. Well, I think the 3 main issues, honestly, are health care. This is what I'm hearing when I go to the doors and when I go to forums. People are terrified that they're going to lose their health insurance and what that would mean to their family. And I can tell you, my own personal experiences, I know that fear. Also, I'll just put in another thing about education. I think it's so critical that we fully fund our schools. I would like to see us have universal preschool. I myself am a Head Start student, and I know as a school board member, children come to us behind. It is that much harder to help them succeed in making sure that they have an even playing field when they start in kindergarten, and then making sure on the back end when the kids are in middle school and high school that they have different pathways. You know, I went to college, but I don't think maybe my children won't. We need to make sure our children are feeling successful and that they can go into the workforce where they want to be. And that includes apprenticeships and training. And then I would absolutely talk about broadband. 25% of my district does not have reliable internet service. And I would love to ask if any of you are struggling with that. I think you may be. And I can tell you, our children are being left behind. They are given a Chromebook or maybe a laptop if they can at the school, and then they're given a sheet of paper of where they can go to get internet after school. Sheets, McDonald's, the libraries. Our children are being left behind because they don't have broadband. We also know our small businesses and our farms, people need to be able to access markets through broadband. And I would also say that we could expand our medical access and affordability through telemedicine. Myself, we often Skype or FaceTime with our doctors if we can't be there. This is a way for our rural communities to access mental health care as well as health care. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hanger, name one legislative issue impacting your district that you would like to address.
Thank you, and I think all of us will have difficulty limiting it to one, so I will start with health care, and then I may digress a little bit. But as many of you may be aware, I've pushed for a number of years for improvements in our health care delivery system, culminating in the expansion of Medicaid last year, and I'm pleased to report that from the beginning of the year till now, we've enrolled 321,000 people statewide through the expansion of Medicaid who now have access to affordable health care. Of those numbers, I think it's important to note that 30,000 of those people that have been enrolled have already presented themselves with serious mental illness. Another 18,000 have presented with serious substance abuse issues, alcohol and drugs. So we're doing tremendous good there. Earlier today, I was in Roanoke, where I was on a panel with the representatives from all the community service boards around the state working specifically on behavioral health. That's one of the areas that I'm focusing on specifically this year. It's hard to appreciate life as we know it and all the abundance and the quality of life that can be enjoyed here in our region if you don't have good health. Certainly if you have substance abuse and mental health and behavioral health issues, huge problem with drugs, opiates specifically, alcohol, and mental illness, autism, and intellectual and developmental disabilities, and we were addressing those issues in Roanoke earlier today. A lot of it is resource driven. We have to have enough money allocated, but the expansion of Medicaid is going to help tremendously on that. Broadband was mentioned. That's another area that I've been actually a leader on. I chaired a conference at Virginia Tech last week where I chaired the Rural Center where we focused on broadband deployment. Yesterday, I moderated a panel at James Madison University for the Federal Reserve that had chosen that for their conference site on broadband, and I would note that we have increased our allocation for grants this year up to $19 million, and I endorsed an application from Culpeper 2 weeks ago.
Thank you. Ms. Hyde, name one legislative issue impacting your district that you would like to address.
Piggybacking on what Amy and Emmett had said, number one issue that I see in my district is broadband internet access. As Emmett said, there was $19 million allocated in the budget. About 2 weeks ago, they announced that there were 39 proposals submitted for 2019 for funds to be spent in 2020. Those 39 proposals totaled $40 million. And as Emmett said, there was only $19 million put in the budget. So when Governor Northam proposed $50 million at the beginning of the year for VATI funding, that was pretty much on target. And the laws also need to be changed So Verizon and Comcast don't have an unfair advantage. When proposals are submitted through VATI, the first companies that usually object to these proposals are Verizon and Comcast. They don't want to spend the money to bring that last mile onto our communities, but they certainly don't want anybody else to do it either. And I think the laws need to be changed in order to make that a lot easier. Education is a big concern of mine, especially our crumbling school buildings in Madison County. Our primary school needs anywhere from $10 to $12 million in renovations. During this session this year, Senator Bill Stanley proposed a $3 billion statewide bond referendum to repair, modernize, and build new schools. That bill died in the Finance Committee, of which Emmett is co-chair. Why can't we, like we do with our regional jails, reimburse counties 25% of the construction cost? If we spent more money on our schools, we wouldn't have to spend so much money on prisons. Healthcare, I am in the Affordable Care Act, and we need to change it so we can buy into Medicaid.
Thank you. And now, our closing remarks. We will begin with Ms. Hine. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and you may begin.
Thank you for your questions, Jeff, and thank you all for your attention. Tonight we've heard some ideas about bringing Culpeper forward. No matter what your economic standing, the General Assembly should be concerned about your ability to thrive and succeed. You've heard where I stand on issues and how I want to make all of our lives better, and I appreciate the questions that Jeff asked. My campaign is about finally making your voices heard in Richmond. For too long, this everyday struggles of rural Virginians have General Assembly. Together, we can change that. What I've said tonight resonates with you. I need your help to make it a reality. We're all here because our rural communities deserve a better tomorrow. Join me so that I can take your voices to Richmond and make them heard on every bill that passes before me. My name is Annette Hyde, and I'm asking for your vote on Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hanger.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to thank the Chamber and everyone for being here this evening for this exercise in representative democracy. It's a good format, and I thank you for that. One of the main issues I haven't mentioned that I'll be working on this year, worked on last year, is the elimination of the potential for gerrymandering. It's one of the things where legislators in the past, either your state legislators or congressmen, have been able to draw districts suitable to their likes so that they select the voters rather than the voter selecting their representatives. So we passed a constitutional amendment last year. We need to pass it again this year, and I'm working hard to make sure we get votes locked down before the elections in case because whoever wins the majority will probably be inclined not to support it again. I want to try to lock them down. A number of issues have been raised here this evening, certainly broadband. We're working methodically, I believe, at this point in time. Technology is advancing, and we're doing public-private partnerships where we're getting good value for the dollars that we're expending. But we do need to put more dollars into that effort. I am fortunate the position that I'm in currently that I can work farmers, agriculture, and forestry, and tourism industry. I'm also a strong proponent of land conservation. Specifically here in Culpeper, I had the opportunity 3 years ago, I guess it was, when there was a need to rebuild the dams outside of the town, the water supply, that I was able to put in the budget because of where I was at, $2.9 million. And I'm working closely with your soil and water conservation districts here in the Culpeper area to address some of the upgrades that are needed to the outside of town. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Laufer.
Yes, I just want to say as well, thank you all for being here. It's encouraging to go out on a random Thursday. And thank you to the Chamber for hosting us. I'm really because I want to work on solving problems. That's why I'm here tonight. I want to ensure that we have access to affordable, quality health care. I want to make sure that our children are able to get a good job and get a great education no matter what their zip code. I want to help expand broadband so that our children can be successful and our businesses can thrive. I want to ensure that Virginia continues to have a thriving economy that can benefit everyone. As I said, I'm here today because I want to do the work. I want to represent you in this district. I want to work to ensure that our community thrives. I want to work to solve problems for you and your families. And I hope, honestly, that this is just the beginning of the dialogue to make our community even more successful. And I thank you again for your time today, and I'm humbly asking you to vote for me on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates. I appreciate your candor and your civility. It's very important for them to address the issues, and I appreciate everybody coming out to hear their answers. We're going to take about a 5-minute break, and we will return with the House of Delegates Candidate Forum. Thank you. And welcome again to the Culpeper Chamber of Commerce House of Delegates Candidate Forum. We're going to begin with introducing the candidates. Each will receive 2 minutes, and then they have 3 questions to answer, and then they will have a 2-minute closing remark. So we will begin on my left with Miss Laura Galante running for the 18th District. Miss Galante.
Good evening. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting this. I know these events take a lot of work to put on. It's great to see you all this evening as well. My name's Laura Galante. I'm running for the 18th District. I grew up in the Virginia public school system from elementary through the University of Virginia and a proud product of public school. I also came up through 4-H. And I was a big livestock judge, sheep judge, meat judge, and competed on Virginia's behalf to win the National Livestock Judging Competition. But I didn't stop there. When 9/11 hit, I focused on national security. I went to school at UVA to go and find out how we keep our country safe. From there, I was recruited into the intelligence community and worked at the Pentagon and the Department of Defense's Defense Intelligence Agency, framing how our adversaries were going after America in cyberspace. I eventually went to the private sector because I didn't feel like the government was taking this problem seriously enough, and built out a team of 90 intelligence analysts that exposed the Chinese military's property theft and hacking of our businesses and our trade secrets. But later on, I started to realize that so much of what our adversaries were exploiting about the U.S. was our trust in ourselves. And that's the reason why I threw my hat into this race. I think our calling and our duty and our service today is to start rebuilding trust in our politics. And I think the best way that we do that is looking around locally and starting to solve our issues together again. The big one that I'm focused on is getting broadband access done across the counties, making sure we have good jobs so we can keep it rural here, and make sure our families have a good atmosphere to raise their kids and good paying jobs. And finally, we need a healthcare system that's affordable and accessible. I'm looking forward to the debate tonight. I don't think good ideas come with a D or an R next to them. I'm excited to talk with all of you after this event as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Please hold your applause till at the end of the session. Thank you. Delegate Wabert of the 18th District.
Good evening. I hope you all are in for a good evening of idea sharing tonight. My name is Michael Webert, and I represent the 18th House District. I represent 2/3 of Fauquier County, 1/3 of Culpeper, all of Rappahannock County, and 1/3 of Warren County as well. I'm honored to represent this district. I've lived in Fauquier County for nearly 2 decades. I farm for a living. In fact, I drove 3 hours to be here tonight with you because I love Culpeper, from Pennsylvania because we're showing cattle in Pennsylvania. And then later on in the week, we'll show, and we'll also start harvest. We started harvest earlier this week with corn and beans. So we do corn, beans, wheat. Our wheat is transported right here in Culpeper. It goes to Ardent Mills. Ardent Mills is a great organization that they spent $26 million, and they're taking local wheat. By the way, if you eat at Chick-fil-A, you're welcome, because that's where a lot of the wheat goes. I'm married to my beautiful wife. So I'm incredibly blessed, and we're also blessed with 2 wonderful children. My oldest goes to school in the public school system, so I've got a stake in the public school system. Unfortunately, they take after their father, so that household is full of a lot of joy and a lot of chaos at the same time. Obviously, my wife is the joy and I'm the chaos. I got into politics originally because we needed to solve our economic problems. And also, with what I did for a living, we faced massive regulatory problems. That's what we're going to continue to do. I passed the largest regulatory reform this Commonwealth has ever seen. And the new report just came out, and we're ahead of schedule. And Secretary Lane and I want to take it across the 41 other parts of our government. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Nick Freitas of the 30th District.
Well, again, thank you very much to the Chamber. Thank you for all of you for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. It does mean a lot to us when you do come out to hear what we have to say. And really, this is an important decision for all of you because I do believe that there's significant differences with respect to worldview, with respect to policies on how we would like to see the direction of the Commonwealth go. 4 years when I ran for office, I ran under the idea that I believed that government had an important role to play in our lives, but it was a limited role. And I have stuck with that over the last 4 years. I believe the government's primary responsibility is to protect our rights, it's to protect our property, but it is not to micromanage our lives. It is not to try to run our lives for us. And over the last 4 years, that's how I voted and that's how I've legislated. And we've seen some great success. As Delegate Weber mentioned, his bill, the Red Tape Reduction Act, is one that other states now are trying to copy because it's been successful here in Virginia. We've lowered taxes. I've passed bills to expand career technical education, to expand apprenticeship programs for our students. All of that has been fed into the whole idea that each individual, when they have an opportunity to live their life the way they want, not the way the government wants, can succeed in this country. And I will happily concede that everyone sitting before you tonight cares about people. We all care. The question is how does that actually manifest itself in policy? And one of the things that's been increasingly frustrated as I've watched the presidential debates going on lately is this idea that when a lot of politicians say they care, what they mean is they want to control. They want to control more of your health care, they want to control more of your business, they want to control more of your education. And that's the part I have a problem with. I served 2 combat tours overseas, and the military sent me to a lot of countries that are on nobody's bucket list, and I've never seen a successful country where the government has the kind of control that is currently being advocated for. So if you see fit, I would like to go back to Richmond and continue to protect individual liberty, private property rights, and keeping government within its proper constitutional boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Please refrain from applause until the end of the session. Thank you. And Ms. Ann Ridgway of the 30th District. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank the Chamber, and thank you all for coming tonight. This is a great opportunity to visit with you guys and let you know who I am. A lot of things are being said that I think and I do, and it's kind of strange because nobody's ever asked me. All these people write stuff, but they've never asked me about it. I'm the daughter of a school minister from Fredericksburg, Virginia, and my parents were people who worked their entire lives for the needs of others. My father was the only white minister that stood up during the civil rights movement in Fredericksburg, and that was quite an impression to me as a child and a young person. I care about the needs of people. That's why I'm running for office. I care about people having health care. I think it's very important that people have affordable health care. I know their families are stressed and are having a very difficult time because they're really concerned about prescription drugs and that type of an issue. I'm also concerned because we need to make sure we have better school systems, and we need to change the AOQ formula so that the rural systems get more money. I don't feel like we're being represented in Richmond because there are some basic needs that this community needs. We have an opioid, heroin, suicide crisis that we're dealing with, and our mental health system has yet to be worked on being funded. I have worked with a solid mental health system. I know how that works. And that is something we all need. It's a basis of our community. It's a basis of our strength. It's the law enforcement, social services, and the school systems and health services desperately need it. Thank you.
Thank you. We will begin our questions with Ms. Galante and work our way to the right. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer once again. How do you feel about the tax structure as it pertains to agribusiness?
Agriculture is the top industry in the Commonwealth. It's an important part of our heritage in this district, and it's something that I think is incredibly important to promote and to drive markets. Right now, we have been hit with tariffs that are hurting our production and commodity agriculture especially hard. To go from $10.70 a bushel for soy at the beginning of 2018 to $8.60, 20% drop in the middle of a year is a huge challenge. We need to diversify beyond our biggest trading partner, China. When it comes to the tax structure for agribusiness, I'm interested in looking at proposals that make farming the way of life and the continued place as the key industry in Virginia for generations to come. I'm interested in finding out how we lower tax burdens around farms that are just starting out, where capital investment, especially if you're not born into the farm, is an incredibly important place to get new farmers in. I'm proud that in America, the average age of farmers is now starting to drop. Especially in our district, we have people who are coming into agriculture who see the direct consumer markets and the demand for well-raised crops, agriculture, livestock, production here in the district, and how they can sell that into markets in Arlington and beyond, and see that as a livelihood. But finding ways to make the tax burden on that initial capital investment to start those farms is an incredibly important way to drive that next population into farming in a way that helps our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Wiebert.
Thank you. Well, first
feel-
of all, our tax structure in the Commonwealth of Virginia is pretty darn onerous. One of the things that we need to do is we need to simplify it. There's a lot of things that can occur. So, for instance, when you have localities that do land use, like Culpeper or Fauquier County, that is meant to help agriculture. That is meant to keep farms in production. One of the things that we can also do in order to help provide starting capital when it comes to agriculture is actually fund the Farmland Preservation Trust that Governor Northam had promised to fill, and that allows counties to implement PDR programs or purchase of developmental rights. And so what that has done is, so for instance in Fauquier County, I don't know how many of you have gone to Bealton and seen Messick's farm, but they started their farm market with money from the PDR program that Fauquier did. They gave up their development rights and started their store. When it comes to commodities, when it comes to international trade, etc., the international trade is done on the board. It's done in Chicago. And yes, we do need to diversify. Yes, we've implemented and we've increased our port. We also need to invest in our inland port. But also, making it easier on machinery and tools tax, et cetera, for folks like Ardent Mills and other companies who make feed and et cetera, and they want to upgrade. We need to help give them a break because they're buying from our local commodity farmers. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Freitas.
Well, there's several things that we can do, and some of the things that we have done. One is that we need to make sure that we lower taxes across the board for everybody. Specifically for agribusiness, we also need to look at how property taxes affect farmers. Also things like BPOL, which is the Business Professional and Occupational Licensing Tax, which we implemented in order to fight the War of 1812. Mission accomplished. I think maybe we can get rid of that one now. But the thing that we have to do is we also have to make sure that when we look at the tax structure at the state level, we're not doing something that actually harms the localities and something they depend on for their own revenue. So there's ways that we can actually switch that out to make sure that you're not having to do a lot of upfront taxes on capital investments that haven't helped you yield a profit yet. Another thing that we have to do with respect to agriculture has to do with, again, the diversification of crops. So, for instance, for 3 years, I fought for industrial hemp in Virginia. I fought against the Terry McAuliffe administration. I fought against the Northam administration. We have finally gotten it through with the Northam administration, but now, even now, some of my Democrat colleagues are trying to bring down more regulations that will actually give Big Pharma an opportunity and a monopoly over some of the retail products that come out of industrial hemp. And so now we've got to go back and once again reiterate that you're not going to take out of the hands of farmers things that belong to the farmers. And so a lot of it is just making sure that we have a good regulatory environment that doesn't punish you for being involved in agriculture. Another thing that we have to continue to fight against in Richmond, and many of my Democrat colleagues support bringing it back, is the death tax. They call it the inheritance tax. Here's the problem with that. Where that really affects is farmers, because when you have somebody that has 1,000 acres worth of land and then all of a sudden they're land rich but cash poor, and then they bring back the death tax, what ends up happening is that now when the grandfather or the grandmother dies, they have to sell off a portion of their land in order to pay taxes on land they've been paying taxes on their entire life. And then once you take that certain portion of land out of production, the farm is no longer viable and they have to sell it all off. So one of the things that we have to do is lower taxes across the board, make it easier to be able to get into agriculture by reducing regulations, and for the love of God, do not increase taxes that are going to specifically hurt our farmers.
Thank you. Ms. Ridgway, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
How do you feel about the tax structure as it pertains to agribusiness?
I have a lot of friends that are farmers. I have a friend who last year grew 200,000 bushels of soybeans, and with the Trump buyback, he lost 90 cents a bushel on his soybeans. Our farmers are hurting. Trade wars have never worked in our history, and our farmers are having a very difficult time because what's happening is China is going to other areas, Brazil and Russia, and they have a lot of infrastructure in Africa. And so what's happening is we're losing our global market. I am very much pro-farmer. I do not think that farmers should be blamed for having bad school systems. We have a real estate tax, and that's how we charge our farmers, and want our farmers to pay more money for taxes, and I don't think we should do that. I think we need to involve ourselves in getting more money from the state to be sure that our schools are properly taken care of and not blame our farmers. Our farmers are, as I said, struggling. The taxes on the farmers, we need to work together. We need to make sure that the Republicans and Democrats work together. I'm a minister's daughter, and that's the only way you can run a church is for people to work together. That is a very important piece for me. I think Reds and Blues have got to work together. I know this is something that is sort of like, is this a new thing? No, it is not. But that is the way we work out the issues for our farmers' taxes, and we make sure that we're taking care of them and making sure agriculture is strong in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second question tonight, we'll begin with Ms. Ridgway. What legislation can the General Assembly pass to help support workforce education in schools?
Say that one more time. I didn't hear the end.
What legislation can the General Assembly pass to help support workforce education in schools?
Workforce education. That's what I didn't hear. Okay. I am very much pro-public schools. I think public schools are the basis of our nation. That is going to be our future. And I do not believe that we need to have school vouchers or anything else. I think it's very important. Rural communities believe that we have to have a quality education for our children because they know how important it is. Workforce education, we're talking about vocational education, and we're talking about technology. Our children need to be able to be successful in school. Children and all of us have multiple intelligences. We need to figure out what that intelligence area is for each child. I wasn't a person who did well in testing, okay? But I'm really good at other stuff. I made it through college, and that was pretty amazing. But all of our children need to make sure that they feel successful, and part of that is making sure we do have a situation where we're going to let our students be able to find their gifts, and they can learn these things in high school and start in with elementary to see what they are interested in doing. Our legislation needs to change. Our legislation in the sense of the Department of Education, the AOQ formula has to change so that our rural school system can get more money from the state, and we can make sure we pay our teachers more and also deal with our infrastructure and make sure we have better quality schools in the rural systems. That is something I will fight for in Richmond, and it's something that has not been fought for a very long time in the 30th District. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Freitas.
Sure. So, like I said in my opening statement, one of the things that I really focused on when I first got into office was career technical education and apprenticeship programs. Because when we talk about workforce development, that's not something that Richmond can mandate down to individual students or schools. That's something that needs to be a natural process of people within the education system actually working with the people that are going to one day employ them, or the universities that are going to one day take them into their institutions. And so I think the important thing is to make sure that we put as many decisions in the hands of parents as possible. One of the things I disagree with Ann on is I think it's interesting to say that we need to find the special gifts that each student has, but we're going to mandate that all from the government on what that looks like. What if we did give more freedom within the educational system so parents did have more options and students had more options and teachers had more options? Because I think when you actually have a marketplace for education instead of a government monopoly of it, you actually have you have an education system that's as diverse as the student body it's seeking to serve. And that really should be the purpose of our education system, serving the student and better preparing them to be able to be productive members of society. So it was very passed when my CTE bill went through and was signed into law with bipartisan support. One of the things that was so important about that is that we had so many government regulations. If you had spent your entire life and career being a carpenter or a welder or HVAC, and you wanted to go into our schools and actually impart some of that knowledge to students, we made you go through a year and a half of additional certification, most of which had nothing to do with what you were going to actually teach. What we did is we managed to move those decisions back down to the local level where it belongs so that we could provide waivers to people so rural schools could get these people involved in there and the students could get the education that they wanted. The other thing that we worked on was teacher reciprocity. It was about making it easier for teachers to come into rural areas and be able to immediately start teaching. And then finally our apprenticeship programs, because you will learn a lot, not just in the classroom, but actually going onto a work site, going onto a farm, and learning all about what it's like to not only perform that task, but what entrepreneurs actually go through in order to make a business successful. So I think we've done a lot. We've been very successful. It's something that Mike and I have worked a lot on, and we want to continue to do so.
Thank you. Please refrain from applause until the end of the session. Delegate Weber, would you like to hear the question again?
Yes, please.
What legislation can the General Assembly pass to help support workforce education in schools?
Okay. So, yeah, if you're asking about a specific piece of legislation, we need to continue the good work of the deregulation bill that we passed because we need to continue that. We need to take that from occupational licensing to the Department of Education. Nick talked about deregulation of the CTE teachers, et cetera. We need to continue that. We need to have the teacher reciprocity so that when we have veterans, when they get out or when they transfer over here, their wives or spouses can find jobs and immediately become teaching here. We've done a number of different things, from trying to provide educational opportunities for parents, et cetera, to see what other jobs are out there, as well as we need to support our community colleges. Our community colleges are one of the most adept organizations at being able to function within the business community to provide the necessary education for folks. Blue Ridge over in the valley provides CDL training. Germanna does nursing here. These are great organizations that then partner with our high schools and partner with our public schools and then provide those same opportunities. We need to continue to do that. We need to fund them accordingly. And then we also need to work on trying to get the most up-to-date technology into those schools as well. And so, those are what we need to work on in my opinion, in order to continue to develop a strong workforce. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. Ms. Galante?
One of the most frustrating things that I hear, and I bet you've heard it too, is when there are parents that say, my kid who's a senior in high school doesn't know what they're doing next year. And I think that's a real failing of how our education system can start to get a career process going in people's minds earlier. And the piece of legislation that I would like to propose around career and technical education is a career component within high school so that kids are realizing that there are more options than just this single-minded focus on college. There are great paying jobs in the trades. For the first time, we have an increase in a need for plumbers and steam fitters and pipe fitters, 21% over the next 10 years, right? These are jobs that are here locally. These are jobs that have a huge amount of demand, and we need to make sure that people understand those options so they're not just driven to take on a lot of student debt. These earn-to-learn opportunities are huge. What I see as the way to do this is what's going to be built just outside this building. the Career and Technical Education Center here in Culpeper that's being added on to Germanna. But here's the opportunity with that center. We can take in some of the private opportunities, like different groups and businesses who see a need for a certain skill set and want to sponsor a class and put some money into that, so that people who come out of school and want to go into a career and technical path have a job with that company right here in Culpeper or anywhere else in the district when they graduate. Those public-private partnerships through technical education programs is a huge place where we can continue to invest our time and energy and show people that there are great jobs here locally in demand in the technical education paths and specialty trades. I would like to be a champion of that in Richmond.
Thank you. Final question for tonight. We'll begin with Ms. Galante. Name one legislative issue impacting your district that you would like to address.
So I think the best way that I've heard broadband in the state of it described recently is that it's a bipartisan failure. And what that means is we have been working hard all along to figure out the best way to get communities connected so that you can get your homework done, so that small businesses, which are 85% of our district, one of which I run, are connected to markets. They can have a basic teleconference call with video capability, the sort of tools that we need to move forward. But here's the thing with internet. While there's been good work done in grant programs, I think we need a real prioritization of actual fiber optic cable in the ground. That does a couple things. It focuses state money on what is the technology, which is still the guts of the internet, the actual wires, that need to be pushed out further into the counties. We need a prioritization on that. The second piece is we need creative solutions about how we get the smaller providers, many of which are in Culpeper, who do find it profitable to connect that last mile or last couple miles, and make sure that they have access to the market, so it's not just the Comcasts of the world who don't find it profitable to push down and make sure we get that last mile covered. So I want to make sure these smaller providers really have a shot at connecting these areas, right? The final piece that I think we've got to make sure that we focus on is seeing that we have our county supervisors supported by people in Richmond who understand the technology changes that are coming, that understand how to drive this at a state level without pushing down a tax burden down to localities and pushing big complex problems down to supervisors when they could have a real partner in Richmond. And that's the approach that I will take as I go to Richmond. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Weber, would you like me to repeat the question?
Greatest legislative, or what you think needs to be done.
One
Correct.
legislative issue impacting your district you would like to address.
Okay, well, there's actually a couple, but I'll start with broadband. Currently, Rappahannock Electric is putting fiber down. Last year, we passed a piece of legislation that allowed Dominion to lay fiber down. There's a backbone coming. There's a backbone working. We need a partner. That's why we have VATI. That's why we put $19 million into the budget, so that our localities who know which technology is best to place to get that last mile to the home. That's the reason we did that last year, and we're going to continue that good work. I've worked with my Board of Supervisors from all across my district in order to do that. The other one is when it comes to health care, when it comes to health insurance. Last year, we had a piece of legislation that allowed farmers and those of us in agriculture to pool under Farm Bureau to be able to have lower health insurance. The governor vetoed it. Not only that, but when it comes to the Unaffordable Care Act, 20% of those that are in the ACA can't afford it because they don't get the necessary subsidies. They might be in a transition too. They might be a farmer who had a pretty good year. Every once in a while it happens, one about every 10. If they don't qualify for the subsidies, if they make $80,000 a year, a third of their income goes to health insurance. That's why we had short-term plans, also vetoed by the governor. We also need to continue the deregulation and the regulatory reform when it comes to broadband, so that when these smaller providers are going through and getting the necessary permits, et cetera, we need to streamline that. That's what my bill last year did, and we need to continue that into some of the other things so that it can get moving faster and to our constituents' homes. So I'm sorry it's more than one, but that's what we're going to be working on.
Thank you. Delegate Freitas?
Yeah, there's no way I'm giving you just one. Look, I think there's more issues facing our community than that. I mean, obviously broadband is incredibly important. I've carried legislation on it. I've worked with Mike on this as well to try to get out there. But by the same token, I think people are genuinely concerned now with respect to their Second Amendment rights and what's actually going to happen if we have a significant change of leadership in Richmond right now. I think people are significantly concerned with respect to what's going to happen to their taxes. The Democrats proposed over $1.2 billion in new taxes the last couple of General Assembly sessions. That's significant. They want more regulations, not fewer regulations, which are going to drastically affect your businesses. They want to raise the minimum wage to $15, and that's just a minimum. There was one legislator that he wanted localities to be able to impose minimum wages as high as $50 for certain occupations. That's the sort of thing that's going to drastically affect your small businesses within your communities. So there's any number of issues, and there is a completely different worldview going on right now. And the thing that I keep coming back to is for the last 4 years, I've stayed true to exactly what I said I was going to do. And so if nothing has drastically changed with respect and the kind of representation you want, do you want a government which, again, focuses on its core responsibilities of protecting your freedom and protecting your property, but isn't constantly interfering in your life? Then I will continue to legislate that way. And I think one of the other issues, too, that I want to bring up, because it hasn't come up, it didn't come up in this forum or on the last one, but it is incredibly important to me, is the question of life. We had a bill last year in the General Assembly where we were going to allow taxpayer-funded abortion up to the point of birth for virtually any reason whatsoever. I'm sorry, I want to be the kind of Commonwealth that welcomes children into the world, isn't looking for new ways to give our tax dollars over to the abortion industry. And we're going to see a significant change if we lose leadership within the House of Delegates and the Virginia Senate next year. So for all of those reasons, I want to continue to fight in Richmond.
No outbursts, please. If you continue, we will ask you to leave. Ms. Ridgway, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Name one legislative issue impacting your district that you would like to address.
I'd like to address the Second Amendment issue. First of all, I think before I say that, I think we definitely need broadband. I think it's going to take state and federal funding to make sure we can do that in the rural areas. It's a very difficult situation, but we brought electricity to the rural areas in 1938. This is 2019. Why can't we figure out broadband? We can, but we have to work together. It has to be a bipartisan working relationship. I am a mother. I have 3 beautiful children. My daughter actually is getting married this weekend. That's where my family is. And it's going to be a joyous occasion, but my son, Michael, will not be there. He was killed in an automobile accident in 1997. I know what it is to lose a child. I know how precious life is. I am not interested in taking guns from conscientious gun owners who want to protect their homes, or farmers or hunters, but I am interested in making sure no other person loses a child or a loved one because of the gun violence in our nation today. There is something wrong when parents are afraid to send their children to school and our children are doing active shooter drills in the school system during the day. We have a problem and we need to address that problem. I believe the General Assembly needs to adopt a bipartisan, common sense safe gun legislation as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Please refrain from applause. We will have our closing remarks. We will begin with Ms. Ridgway and work our way to the left. Ms. Ridgway.
Again, thank you for the Chamber doing this tonight. Thank you all for coming. I'm older than most of the people sitting up here. I've had a lot more life experience. And I've seen what happens when we deregulate many things. It doesn't work very well because although I love people, we're all humans and we do some really strange things when we get deregulated. I'm not for solid deregulation of the government and interfering. I personally do not think that a woman's reproductive rights should be infringed on by politics and political people who believe that they should come between God and the woman who have that decision to make on their own. That is something that I strongly believe in. I want to make sure that our education system is solidly funded, and I want to go to Richmond to fight for the rural education system. I want to fight to make sure we have health care. Our current delegate not only voted against expansion of the Medicaid system, and he also he actually went so far as to run with his wife against Emmett Hanger because he voted for Medicaid. He went way beyond most people about not wanting people to have affordable health care. I also am very concerned that we do something drastically with our mental health system. I know what a mental health system looks like when it works. And we have to do something. If we wouldn't have the opioid crisis today, if we'd had a solid mental health system. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Freitas?
So again, I'll go back to my initial comments. When people say I care, sometimes I get it, but sometimes what I hear is I want to control. And so when Ann says that, well, we can't be trusted, we can't deregulate too much because we as people can't be trusted. But she doesn't have a problem trusting the few people that you're going to elect to political positions in order to wield supreme power. So no, if you don't trust people to always make the right decision, then we should actually be diffusing government power and giving it more in the hands of individuals as opposed to just those select few that happen to be in Richmond or Washington, D.C. When it comes to things like health care, again, do you really want the government controlling your health care? If you do, Ann is definitely your candidate, and I'm not, because I want to actually have more power in the hands of individuals. When we look at all the things that frustrate about our health care, whether it's drug prices, well, you can thank the FDA. Whether it's insurance companies having too much control over it, you can thank federal regulations. Whether it's not having enough doctors and nurses, once again, you can thank federal and state regulations that actually reduce the number of people that can actually become doctors. When it comes to our Second Amendment rights, everybody agrees that we need to address mental health issues, and everybody agrees that we need to have more security for our schools and for our population. It's why I've carried legislation that makes it easier for us to get security for our schools. But I'm not going to infringe on the rights of law-abiding citizens. I'm not going to tell one of the people, for instance, that is in this room that was almost a rape victim, that had to defend herself, that asked to be able to defend herself, and it was her government that refused her the ability to be able to do so. That is not making anyone safer in the process. And when it comes to just general individual liberties, what you do, again, with your kids' education, with your business, with your life, I want more of those decisions to be made by you. I trust free people to make the right decision more often than I do people in Richmond or Washington, D.C. to make it for you. And that is the fundamental difference with respect to how we solve problems. It's not that we disagree about the problems, we disagree about the solutions. Ann wants to give the government more power because she cares, but that's what it will ultimately lead to, the government having more power. I want you to have more power over the decisions that you make throughout your life.
Thank you. Delegate Wabert.
Now you all know why I don't like going after Nick. Well, thank you all for having me. Thank you for coming. It's a good turnout, and thank you for everybody that worked very hard to put this on. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, and it's truly an honor to be here. It's been an honor to represent the 18th District, to work with my local governments, to work with my citizens, and to the citizens that put me in this seat. And it's just truly an honor. I feel that I have the most beautiful district. Sorry, Nick. In the Commonwealth. Last year we worked very, very hard over the course of 3 years to get the regulatory reform package in. The new report that came out said that they're going to exceed efforts this year and cut regulations 10%. It's not only cutting regulations, it's streamlining government, it's making government more accountable to the people. This was a systematic piece of legislation. It took a lot of effort to get it through, and it took bipartisan effort to get it through. It took building coalitions. Going forward, we need to expand that. We need to expand that into agriculture. We need to expand that into education. We need to expand it into healthcare. Nick mentioned all of that. That's what we are going to continue to do. We need to work very, very hard because of all of the issues that face us, our Board of Supervisors and our local government and our individuals. We need to hear from you. And we're going to continue this good work, and we're going to continue to serve you, the individual. Thank you very much for having me, and please vote for me on November 5th.
Thank you. Ms. Galante.
Galante, thank you. I'm excited that there are this many people that care about the important decisions that happen in Richmond and aren't just focused on what's on Twitter and happening in DC. Because I think we've got a real opportunity in Richmond. And here's what it is. We're right now at the cusp of a moment where our economy is changing, our society is changing faster than any of us can keep up with. And what we need is leadership that understands those changes and sees Virginia for what it is, a real leader in this country from an economic standpoint and in our communities. And here's how I think we do that. We start with getting serious about our workforce. I know that my opponent likes to talk about his regulatory package, deregulatory package, and that's great. But when you look at Virginia and how it's ranked #1 as the top business state in the country, get into the methodology, how they get to that ranking. And the first thing is workforce. Second's our economy and our jobs. The third's our infrastructure. Then it's education. These are the same factors that companies cite when they choose Virginia as the place to make jobs. That's why we need someone who understands how to position our workforce in technology, in the next jobs that are coming, in green jobs that are making up some of the highest percentage of growing jobs. Virginia's 10th in the country on green jobs that are coming. Let's be first. We have a real opportunity to drive Virginia's workforce that's highly educated, that's incredibly entrepreneurial, and move that forward. The next piece is on community. We love our small community here. That's the feeling of why we live here. It's the feeling of why we stay here. The important piece on community is making sure we can access and afford our health care. And unlike my opponent, I support the expansion that Senator Hanger shepherded through last year to cover over 300,000 Virginians, 20,000 veterans, 20,000 kids to get health care for the first time. We need to keep making health care affordable. The highest premiums in the country are 30 miles from here in Charlottesville. I would humbly ask for your vote on November 5th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now you can clap. Thank you to our candidates. Thank you to our media partners, and thank you to our audience tonight. Wonderful forum, and our next one will be held on the 15th, and that is the Board of Supervisors and Commonwealth Attorney Forum. Thank you and have a great night.